Excel accounting practice problem. Purchase of furniture and investment transactions. Get ready because we're about to excel. We are in our Excel worksheet. In prior presentations, we put together this worksheet from a blank sheet, now continuing to enter transactions into it. If you have access to it, there's going to be two tabs on down below. We got the example tab and the practice tab. The practice tab being where we left off last time. The example tab, in essence, being an answer key. Let's take a look at it now. So last time we entered these two transactions as we were starting out our business to fund the business, to get cash into the business. In other words, increasing the checking account, the other side funds coming from either us, the owner, or from a loan from the bank. Now we're going to take some of that money and we're going to start to invest it into things that are going to help us to generate revenue. Oftentimes for many businesses, those will be large pieces of equipment, furniture, building, and so on and so forth that are going to be used for revenue generation in the future. If we have any leftover funds that we're going to use in the business, but not at this point in time, we're going to put some of those into a short-term investment. We're imagining something like the stocks and the bonds. So let's go over to the practice tab and do those journal entries. I'm going to first hide some of the transactions on the left-hand side. We don't need to see those anymore. They'll just get in the way. So we're going to put our cursor on column A and drag on over to skinny E. A to skinny E, right click, and we're going to hide those columns. The next thing we want to do just to set up our worksheet is that I'm going to copy the ending balances over here and put them in the beginning balances. The reason I want to do this is to use this little trial balance worksheet in order to look at the current transactions that we're working with. The general ledger then will show the added detail. This is a little bit unusual because oftentimes we would think of the trial balance as being created from the general ledger, but I think having this nice little worksheet to focus in on each transaction is really useful. So this is the way we're going to proceed with it. So we're then going to copy these ending balances here. I'm just going to copy them and I'm going to paste them on the beginning balances, pasting them 1, 2, 3. So now this is our starting point, which is at the same point we ended with last time. I'm going to delete the entries in the middle now. And so now we can focus in on the current transaction, even having, or as well as having, the general ledger having the detail for the current period we're in, the current month. So we're now going to take the money that we have, we're going to invest it in furniture and equipment and in some investments, some short-term investments, starting with the short-term investments, noting that as we put money into something like stocks and bonds, this particular business is not in the business of financial investments. We sell guitars and do guitar lessons and whatnot. And therefore, if we have substantial investments, substantial cash, then we should be giving it to the owner in the form of a draw, and the owner then investing it, rather than basically making this our investment machine, because this is the machine to make money on the selling of the guitars generally. That's how you would generally think of it. However, if we have some short-term parking of the cash that we expect to be using in the future, we might then say, I want to put it, into something that's going to be generating revenue, such as stocks and bonds. We're also only going to have basically one line item for the stocks and bonds here. And if you want detail for all the different holdings of the accounts, then you might want to have that in your reports or in other worksheets to support. And we're just going to have, in essence, a line item showing our investments in investments like stocks and bonds. It's going to be a current asset, so we want it above the furniture and equipment. So I'm going to select these 4 cells on furniture and equipment, right click on it and insert, and that should put them above it. So I want to shift all of these cells down, giving us that row right above it, not a full row, but just those cells right above it. And then we're going to call this a short-term investments. Is that spelled right? I think it is. I feel like it's good. And then we'll sum it up, 0 and summing up on this side. So we've got our same thing, same formulas. And now we can then post to it. We're going to say that this happens on 1/4. 1/4 equals the short-term investment. Other side, the checking account. Checking account going down with a credit. The short-term investment and asset account going up with a debit. We're going to say that we're going to take $12,000 and put it into the short-term investment. So we're going to indent this, alignment and indent. Let's take a look at what that would look like in our transactions. So we're going to say now short-term investments, of course, going up. We're in M7, which is going to be equal to that 12,000. There we have it, the checking account. Then up top, we'll put our cursor on M4 equals the credit of the 12,000, taking it from 140,000 down in the credit direction. So it's going down because it's a debit balance account. We did the opposite thing to it, to 128,000. Then we'll also post this to the trial balance, but we're going to have to add the short-term investment as we post it to the general ledger. So we need to add it, that short-term investment. It's right after the inventory here. So if I go back on over, adding another account after the inventory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy from Skinny S to V right here. Just copy those. I'm going to put that right in this cell right here and right click if it lets me and insert the copied cells and delete any beginning balances or create a 0 on there. And this one down here is going to be 0 as well. And then maybe I'll just delete this whole box down here. I don't need that one. This is not necessary. So I'm going to format paint it and delete it. So we just have the stuff up top, and this is going to be our investments now. Investments will now be equal to the short-term investments. That's the name of it. And the date was on, I think, 1/4. And the amount that we're going to post to it now in Y5. Y5, because that's where it just happened to lie, on Y5. So we're going to say that's going to be the 12,000, increasing it up to 12,000. It's not being included in our summary data up top. So I'm going to double click this one. It should be out of balance. Go to the end of it and say plus. Take the one at the end, the 12,000, and now it's out of balance as it should be by that 12,000 until we record the other side, which is to the checking account, which is nice and easy because that one's right here, right in front of our face. 1/4. This is going to be equal to the 12,000 decrease, taking that 140 debit balance down by a credit of 12,000 to 128,000. That being represented now on the trusty TB trial balance as well. General ledger back in balance too. So let's do another one. Now this time we're going to take money out of the checking account and spend it on furniture and equipment. I'm not going to have a subledger for the types of furniture and equipment that we purchase, because a lot of times we might use like a tax software to have a tax depreciation schedule. That subledger gets quite more complicated, and oftentimes we might like, again, use other software to help us out to pick that stuff up. So no matter what accounting system, whether in QuickBooks or in an accounting software or in Excel, you might then try to list the new purchases that you have for furniture and equipment, and possibly depend on your tax professional to help input that in the tax software, and then let them then have the supporting ledger and give you the data for the journal entries that you need to do periodically, either on a tax basis or on a book basis. And that's another reason why you might do that, because you're going to have to do tax basis and book basis anyways. So tax software then is a nice place to do that, since you have to do the tax basis no matter what, and the tax software can usually do that conversion quite easily, as opposed to Excel, which could be, somewhat tedious. Although be a fun project, we can take a look at it another time. But in any case, we're going to say this is 1/9 here, and we're going to put stuff into furniture and fixtures. So we're imagining in our guitar shop, like we're buying couches and like furniture stuff, like guitar stools, I guess, whatever you would have in the guitar shop. And then that's coming out of the checking account. So checking account going down with a credit. We're going to say we purchased $16,000 worth of furniture and equipment. We, of course, would want to list that out in terms of what we purchased in detail, so that we can give that to our tax professional to populate that into the subledger that we could typically get from the tax software. Let's post this out. Furniture and equipment is going to be up top. We're in M8 equals then that 16,000. And then the checking account has something in it. So I'm going to say F2 and say plus, and then F2, and then scroll down without ever touching the mouse at all. Puts us back in balance down below. Notice there's no impact on the income statement thus far, because we're still just taking that money and spending it on stuff that we hope will generate income in the future. Let's post it then to the general ledger. So we're looking furniture and fixture. That's going to be the second to last green account, which is the asset accounts. So there's the furniture and fixtures right over here. And I got this hole in my ledgers. I could fix that, but maybe I'll leave it there for now. Maybe I'll fix it in a second. And then we're going to say this happened on 1/9. This will be equal to, scrolling to the left, we're picking up that furniture and fixture. There we have it, increasing from 75,000, debit balance increasing in the debit direction to 91,000. 91,000 also tying out to the trusty TB, out of balance on the general ledger, the GL. Then we'll post the other side, that going to the checking account. So we're going to be over here in the checking, P819. And we're in Q8, which equals then that 16. So it takes us from 128,000 down by the 16 because this is a debit balance account. We're doing the opposite thing to it, to 112,000. And then we're going to repeat that process, imagining we are purchasing another piece of equipment from some other place. And we're going to say 1/9 here. Notice what we're not doing in this system. We're not tracking the vendors, basically for purchases that are made for cash. We're only tracking the vendors when we have a payable in this accounting system here, because that's when we have to determine who it is we pay and when we're going to have to pay them. So that's in a tax software where you basically enter stuff into the software. It's a lot more easy to track every transaction by a vendor, which might not be necessary to make the actual trial balance, but could be useful to make other types of reports in terms of what you paid, by vendor type of reports. So notice there's a less of a level of detail in the way we're going to do our entry into the accounting system here, as can be done a lot more easily, say in a database program that has, multiple dimensions that they could put together. So in any case, we're going to say furniture and fixtures is going to be up top. And then we're going to say the other side's going to the trusty checking account. Once again, this time we purchased 7,000 of guitar related, like furniture and equipment stuff for our guitar shop. I'm not sure exactly what, but we purchased stuff. And then we're going to go over here in M8, something's in it. So I'm going to say F2 plus F2, scrolling down to that 7,000. So now we're up to 98,000 on the furniture and equipment. In the checking account, the other side that we're going to post, something's in it. So I'm going to say F2 plus F2. And so then we're going to go down to that 7,000. Yes, I said F2, F2, F2. Don't be offended or anything. So then we're going to post this out, and this is going to be going to furniture and equipment on the general ledger. So here's the furniture and equipment. So let's go find that account on the GL, the trusty GL. That's going to be here in AB6. We're going to say this happened on 1/11. So we're in AC6. So we're going to say equals, left to the wall, last transaction, debit 7,000 in H. It's in H14. You could just memorize H14, put it here. Remember, you do want to put cell references. If you just type in 7,000, that works until something doesn't work. And then you try to figure out, and you don't got these cool, nifty tools like that to find out what happened because you didn't use the cell references and that cool, nifty tool. The cool, nifty tool is in the formula auditing right there, if you want to know, if you were wondering. Because why wouldn't you wonder about such an interesting thing? So 91,000 plus the 7,000 brings us up to the 98,000. And then the other side is going to then go to the checking account, to trusty checking. Trusty checking is right here. We're on 1/9 again. This one should be on 1/11, actually. Let me change that. Let me change it. Notice this, I did this with a formula. No, I just put in 1/11. There, and then I'm going to put, notice you can put the dates in here with a formula too. I could say equals that 1/11, making it less likely that I mess up the dates too, but I don't always do that because that takes a little longer. So we're going to say this is going to be the 7,000, so it goes from 112 debit balance down because it's a It's a debit balance account. We're decreasing it, doing the opposite thing to it, to 105,000. That 105,000 now matching up the trustee trial balance, the general ledger back in balance, the trial balance also in balance. No impact yet on the profit and loss. Now we could fill it. You might say, well, what about this gap right there? I could like leave it there, but you know, what if won't I end up with a lot of gaps? You could fix it, of course. I could just do this. I could say, okay, I'm gonna take this and move it over there. You could drag it over there, but it's the same as cutting, which is Control X or right click and cut it and then put it right there. And then this one's got to go up to the top. So I could take this Control X and put it right there. And then this one's got to go over here. So I could say Control X and put it right there. And then this one's got to move up. So I could say Control X and put it right there. And then this one needs to be under there, so I could say Control X and put it right there. And this one needs to be moved up then, if that happens. Control X. And then this one's going to go right there. And then this one needs to be underneath, could go underneath, so I could take this Control X and put it right there. And then I got this whole gap that I don't need any of these cells. So I could put my cursor on the skinny cell right here to the AP, not to the other skinny, and then right click and delete that. And now we've cleaned up our general ledger. Quite tedious in Excel, but doable. And it's just as we've demonstrated, it's done. It's doable. It's been done right before your eyes like magic. So next time we'll continue on with more transactions.